welcome to the lofty mountain tops of South Wales. Today we're walking along the Ridgeway, a path that dates back thousands of years BC. It's so old that when the Romans came to this part of Wales, they called it ancient. So that's pretty damn old. As you'd expect with a place like this, there is just so much history attached to it. We're currently descending a place called Mynydd-Y-Gaer, where there was an Iron Age hill fort, and it was the scene of a very bloody battle between the indigenous Welsh and the invading Roman armies. There are also tales of this as a pilgrimage route. In fact, even William the Conqueror himself is meant to have gone on a pilgrimage from London to the tomb of St. David, and this was the path that he and his henchmen took.
They, like countless other pilgrims before them, will have walked the route along the Ridgeway as it climbs from Caerphilly Mountain and follows those peaks all the way along through Llantrisant and then as far as Margam. I have to say that I personally adore the Glamorgan Ridgeway. This ancient highway is littered with artefacts as far back as 2000 BC, with the same degree of frequency as you might find discarded McDonald's packaging on the verge of a modern road. There's so much of it. You've got the earthworks and remains of forts and villages, and burial mounds dating back to the Bronze Age.
But the era of history that we're interested in today is that murky period after the Romans left the country. We're looking at the period of history during the reign of King Arthur.
The murkiness I talk about here is not so much a lack of records. We've got plenty of information. We've got De Excido et Conquista Britannia by Gildas the Wise, which was a contemporary account. We've also got plenty of legend-based works like the Black Book of Carmarthen and Colwch and Olwyn. We've also got the Annales Cambrea, the works of the Venerable Bede, and if we look into later history around about the 12th century, we've got Historia Regum Britannia by Geoffrey of Monmouth and various works by Gerald of Wales. So it's not that we don't have information. What we do have is people's perceptions of the world around them 1,000 years or more ago was quite different from the modern view. So place names and descriptions, for example, are vague to say the least. So just like we might have all heard of places like Camelot and Badon Hill and Camlan and Avalon, none of us are really able with any confidence to point to a map and say those places are definitely there. It's not until the medieval period, more than 600 years after these events, that we start to get a joined up vision of what Britain looks like. So scholars of that time, like Geoffrey of Monmouth, had to speculate where they thought places like Camelot and Avalon and Badon were. So, for example, he thought that the town of Caerleon was the original site of Camelot. However, we never have anything more than speculation to try and put a little pointer on the map. So you can imagine how excited the world was when an amateur archaeologist claimed to have found proof of the site of Avalon, the last resting place and grave of King Arthur himself. And you'll never guess where he found it.
So we in Wales are quite used to having place names with two names attached to them. Obviously the original Welsh name, and then usually an English translation, a defral dock of the four locks to the invaders. This place has two names. One, as you would expect, is Welsh. The other is Latin, because the invasion that is contemporary with this place was the one led by the Romans. So the Welsh name for this place is Llanbedr-Yn-Y-Mynydd. In Latin, that's Peterston-Super-Montum. If these remains behind me are not those of the oldest church in Wales, they are of one of the oldest churches in Wales. This is contemporary with the very beginning of Christianity in this country. So this place was a town and a bustling community, and they lived here right up until the 7th century. So we're talking 1,500 years ago.
You only have to look around at the earthworks and the various remains that make it really clear that this site is both A, historic, and B, substantial and of importance. So please, no matter what else I'm just about to tell you about this story, do not lose sight of that. This is a genuine site of historical significance up here on the Glamorgan Ridgeway, just above Brynner. According to reports in the Wales Online in 1990, an amateur archaeologist claimed to have dug up an ancient axe, a knife, and a small cross which carried the inscription Pro Anima Artorius, meaning for the soul of Arthur. This was not the first find that got people excited. And in the late 80s, a claim was made that a King Arthur memorial stone had been discovered here as well, so speculation was rife. Could Llanbedr-Yn-Y-Mynydd be the fabled site of Avalon? Is King Arthur actually buried here? According to Geoffrey of Monmouth, Avalon was an island and Arthur was rowed out to it over a glassy flat sea. He claimed that this island was the place where the legendary sword Excalibur had been forged and that it was ruled over by an enchantress called Morgan. Gerald of Wales also described it as an island, but not so much one in the conventional sense, but more as an oasis, an island of fruit trees, an orchard in an otherwise barren place. He backed this theory as the name Avalon is so close to so many old Celtic words for the word apple. So could that orchard have been here? Enter a team of professional archaeologists from the University of Edinburgh to investigate these claims. Now, their investigation did not get off to the best start when the person who claimed to have made these discoveries refused to show them to the university archaeologists. However, the dig went ahead, and they did discover a tomb, but on opening it, it was empty. A story emerged that the body had been exhumed and reinterred in Coity. But I have to say that as much as I would love the story to be true, that maybe Avalon is here above Brynner, that as yet the evidence has not been found that could possibly prove it. In the same way Iolo Morgannwg tried to claim that the castle ditches in Llantwit Major was the site of Camelot, we once again have a claim that cannot be backed up and is quite likely to be absolute bunkum. Still, Llanbedr-Yn-Y-Mynydd is an historically significant place, even if it is possibly not the site of Avalon. But do not be downhearted, one and all. Okay, so our first Arthurian possibility might be bunkum, but we still have another one up our sleeve, and this one looks altogether more credible. Let's go back to Gildas for a moment. His writings describe the Saxon invasion of ancient Britain, not so much as a decisive event, but more as a long and hard-fought piecemeal affair, much like the Norman incursions into South Wales. He reported that gains would be made by their armies, but then just as quickly overturned. All would go quiet for a while, and everyone would think that the Angles and the Saxons had gone home, only for them to return and try again. But all of that toing and froing came to something of a climax at a decisive landmark battle, the Battle of Badon Hill. The 9th century scroll entitled Historia Britonum, the battle was on Mount Baden, in which there fell in one day 960 men from one charge by Arthur. And finally, the Annales Cambrea, which says that at the battle, Arthur carried the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ on his shoulders for 3 days and 3 nights, and the British were victorious. The outcome of the battle, it was seen, was a decisive victory for the ancient Celtic Britons that saw the start of a peace which lasted for 70 years. All very interesting, you might say, but what's that got to do with the Glamorgan Ridgeway? Well, one thing that experts about this period generally are agreed upon was that the battle took place somewhere along the Ridgeway. Quite a few put forward the hamlet of Badebury in Wiltshire as a candidate. It sort of makes sense. Badebury does at least sound a little bit like Baden, and it also lies on a stretch of the Ridgeway, even if it is a non-English bit of it rather than a Welsh bit. Geoffrey of Monmouth believed Baden to be Bath, again a place on the Ridgeway. However, anyone with an Ordnance Survey map or even access to Google Maps can tell you that above Coedrehyn, between Bridgend and Maesteg, is a hill called Mynydd Baeden. There are some very enthusiastic local historians who will tell you that this is the true site of Baden, and it is not an absurd suggestion. Just like Badebury and Bath, it sits on the Ridgeway. Where it sits on the Ridgeway is at a point where it intersects with another ancient road called Ffordd y Gyfraith. That one runs north from Lladeston to Llangynoed. So as much as it's a quiet spot today, back in the 5th century, this would have seen a very accessible place to drive an army to. There's also the remains of an Iron Age hill fort here. It would have been identified as being of strategic importance. The peak of this hill is also a very long and flat plain, with outstanding views when visibility is good. It does look like the perfect place for a battlefield, depending on how much of it was covered in trees back then.
Now, what we're talking about here is needlessly controversial. There is a conspiracy theory that the history of Britain prior to the Saxon invasion has been suppressed. That may or may not be true. One thing that's definitely true is, certainly since the Plantagenet, the dominant force in British history have been the English. So the history that we're taught in schools, the history that generally is available in books, is the history of England. There's always this slight feeling that nothing ever happened outside London, the home counties, or at a push York. So when historians start saying, did you know something quite significant happened near Bridgend? It's generally met with a certain amount of derision, as if that could not possibly be right. Having taken that lofty argument, of course, I have absolutely no proof for anything that I've just said. Anyway, Jasper and I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more, please subscribe to this channel so you get notified every time we upload a new one. There's always tons to enjoy, all about the history of South Wales. But look, until the next time we meet, please enjoy your history.